Salim Saleh and Muhoozi are now running the show. They're doing everything presidential or to pretend as if Museveni is actually present, but they're working from the same script of Museveni from way back when he came to whatever he's doing now, whether he's here or not, okay? So the children of Gaba were articulated or planned entirely by Salim Saleh, Muhoozi, Frank Mwesigwa, some SFCs, and Abbas Byakagaba. They all planned this at Serena Hotel. Serena Hotel is in Mutundwe, I believe. These plans were made by them to divert attention or divert conversation during this Easter period from focusing on Museveni and his wife being out of action, and also to bring certain laws that pertain to nursery schools or kindergarten schools for children. And the biggest deal was that they actually want the land where the school is located, which that would be somewhere around Gaba Community Church. The mafias, the Salim Salehs, the Muhoozis, and so on would like to take over that land. I understand they don't like the pastor or the owner of that church, who built everything from ground up on his own. They also want to cause fear and intimidation, as always, amongst the people, because they're preparing for a few things. First of all, they're preparing for this coup d'etat. The other thing is they're trying to die down the limelight of His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. The other thing is Museveni is witchcraft-centered. All his life, his coming to power, his existence, his bringing Janet into the Ministry of Education has gone with some loss of blood. As I said before, Museveni has destroyed lives of unborn babies to senior citizens in Uganda. In any way that he's able to do it, he has done it. He has done it through accidents. He has done it through actual murder. Museveni is documented cutting open a pregnant woman during the time when he was still in the bush and killing her, cutting her belly open. Museveni is documented by one of the survivors of the children who his witch doctor had requested that he gets unborn children from their mother's womb and sacrifice them somehow. This is something that he achieved successfully of two women, but one of them escaped and had this child in a foreign country, one of the neighboring countries, and he came back to speak about it. So when I say this man has destroyed from unborn to seniors, you can relate from your neighborhood, from where you come from the people you know, people who have gone without any sort of explanation. And Museveni continues to do these things day in, day out. Unfortunately for these children, he must have to sacrifice something of such sort because he was asked by his whatever gods, his witchcraft, to do something like this. Okay? So one of the reasons that he did that, it was to satisfy his witchcraft, because they requested for young or blood of very young souls, so that Museveni gets healing from the surgical operation he's undergoing. As I said, that his health has critically declined. And so he's been requiring to perform some sort of surgeries on himself to be able to do better and come back into the eyes, before our eyes, looking normal. But as an old man and as a man full of bad karma, several things will happen to Museveni. But like nature would have it, at this age, everything is crippling him. Any and everything is falling apart. Museveni thought he was immortal. Museveni thought that he would live forever. Museveni thought that by now there would be no opposition or nobody giving him a hard time. But His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu has shocked the heck out of him. Okay? So for 4 reasons, these children, lost their lives. To divert attention during this Easter period, to bring laws against nursery schools or schools of kindergarteners or children, to cause fear among people as they're trying to move forward with their coup d'etat, which is for themselves, by themselves, with themselves, for their own achievement. Nobody else's. They're going to try to cause a war upon themselves, and then they will come in and try to rescue it as if they took it away from somebody who was trying to take it from them. So when I mention it's by themselves, for themselves, within themselves, amongst themselves, to achieve their personal goals, it is what it means. It's for them. So anyway, what was the arrangement like for this event? This very sad, awful event of the children losing their lives. Here is how they planned it out. The gentleman that you see that they paraded, Muhoozi paraded as the executor or the person who killed those children, the machete welder. That person was picked up either in the 2020, remember heading towards the elections, there were a lot of people who were abducted, who were killed, who were hurt because they were trying to demean Noop and the opposition and all of that. That person, the gentleman who was in the picture in a gray shirt and gray pants, likely is a prisoner who was caught around the period of 2020, or somebody from prisons in Tanzania whom they offered a deal to come and perform this thing so that he gets time off or gets freed from his prison sentence. It was well planned. However, they felt like it was poorly executed according to the after meeting that was attended by them at Kaihura's house in Muyenga. I actually know where Kaihura lives in Muyenga because I lived in Muyenga once. Okay, so according to them, the plan did not go as planned because they sent this gentleman, or their plan was that at least 20 children would be murdered from this school. The goal was 20 children. But this gentleman who went to perform this act went in at a time where it is Easter period, okay? He went in on a Wednesday as a regular parent. He was driven there by the Muhoozis or the SFCs, because it was planned between the SFCs and SFCs Frank Mwesigwa, Salim Saleh, and Muhoozi at Serena Hotel in Mutundwe. I believe that's what it is, Mutundwe. Okay? Their plan was to drive this man, which they did on Wednesday. This man went to the school, to the administration office, to seek or pretend to seek admissions for a child of his to go to that school. Okay? Now, when this gentleman went to that school, he was seeking an application for a child of his. And because it was a Wednesday and the following day would be Easter Thursday, there were fewer children. As you know, we celebrate Easter, and a lot of people are Christians or Catholics or people who will celebrate Easter. So the children were fewer than usual. Okay? And he had a lot of questions that he kept asking. And so the person who was talking to him, trying to get the admission process going, told him that he needed to come back the next day. Otherwise, he was to execute this thing on that Wednesday that he went first when he was driven to the school. Okay? He asked a lot of questions, as a parent, what do the children eat, or how do they live? Where do they, let me see the classrooms. Let me see what is the curriculum and all these kinds of things. So he asked the right questions like every parent would. However, I understand that because there were too many questions, they asked him to come back the next day. But being a Thursday, it's even closer to Easter. They call it Holy Thursday in Uganda. So they asked him and said, well, he went in, he was driven to now complete the operation, okay? He found just 4 children outside on the veranda. And when he came in, the person who was talking to him, continuing with the questions about admission, saw him with a machete on his side. And she asked him, why do you have a machete on you? What is that? And he fidgeted. So when they figured him out, he had to hurry up and do what he needed to do. So he went on to the veranda where there was 4 children, and he cut all 4 to death. He chopped their neck, and those children bled to death. So because he found just those 4, because most of the parents had their children at home in preparations for Easter, and the ones who brought their children were the ones who normally bring the children so that they can go and continue working and maybe pick them up later and things like that. All he found was 4 children. Immediately when this happened, when the administrator saw the machete, this man started to rush and do what he was sent to do. So he went on and started to kill those 4 children that were sitting on the veranda, while the administrator who saw him and saw what he started to do ran out and started to scream. She screamed on top of her voice. In the meantime, there were plans to execute such a deal or such an activity in more than one school. The other school is called Modern School, which is in the neighborhood. Okay? Now, as the lady started to scream, running out of the fence, trying to get help, which is how we normally seek help in Uganda, is to make a loud noise so somebody will hear, to tell somebody who will tell somebody. The whole village or community started to pour in to see what's going on. You know, a school in the neighborhood, everybody knows who runs the school, who lives there, or who takes care of the children. When they heard the principal or the person's voice, they decided to run in and see what's going on. And she started to tell them what's going on, and they found the children dead, unfortunately. Being very small, they can't reserve, you know, the bleeding could rush. And when you cut the jugular, which is the biggest blood vessel that brings blood to the head, once that's cut, you could lose a lot of blood to the brain, and that kills the brain almost instantly in the shortest time possible. So he knew what to do, and he did that. Okay? So as people started to come in and run in, the military poured immediately, and the police. I'm talking as soon as he started to scream, because as soon as the lady started to scream and the community joined in and screaming, those other executors who were at a different school called Modern, who were about to attempt their activity of killing more children there, stopped and rerouted back and retreated back because they could not continue, because the community had already said, you know, had already communicated that something is wrong. So the Abbas via Ggaba, Abbas and Frank Mwesigwa were at the scene at the same time. More SFCs poured in, more policemen poured in. The reason for them coming is not to rescue these people. No. Not to rescue the community, not to rescue the school-going children, not to try to hide or get whoever the perpetrator was. Their purpose of being there, which they had already been informed, they're already waylaid around the area to protect the murderer. The police, the SFC, and the military, Abbas and Frank, were there to protect the murderer on scene. Not to protect the people or rescue the event. No. Okay? So there was a whole battalion of army military present near Gaba Seminary on standby to rescue that man. Not to rescue the situation with the children and parents. That's why the army poured immediately. The reason why they did was because they were informed, they knew what was happening, and they were part of the plan. The murderer had communication gadgets. If you have seen when, for example, new prisoners are arrested, they take anything of comfort or luxury that they have. This man had his watch even when he was having his first pictures taken at the police station. Okay? This murderer had a military watch. That watch is worn by Rwanda's military. That watch is worn by people of the military service. This man was wired with equipment to communicate events as they were going on. He could whisper what he was doing, what his findings were, if the lady was not watching him, whoever he was trying to register, pretending to register a child with. He sent signals to Frank Mwesigwa the whole time. So after I think he told them that there was just 4 and we're done and let's get going, because the lady had already invited the community and they were in. They were all very upset because they were disappointed that there were only 4 children that this man had killed. Can you believe that? They said it was only 4. And when they told Muhoozi, he was even more furious because Muhoozi wanted at least 20 children. They want this to be the talk of town for at least the next month, to clear Kyagulanyi's name from the media and also sacrifice for Museveni as he heals or whatever from his surgery. And then to divert all manner of attention from the absence of Museveni as the president of the country, because he's not going to make any appearances unless they AI something that looks like him speaking on some sort of TV or radio. So they were disappointed that it was just 4. Muhoozi was absolutely furious and told the SFCs and the military and the Frank Mwesigwas to take him off the scene immediately through a water body so that they could try to toss him off the boat or do something to him and let him end up in the lake or whatever. But all the men with boats, all the boat or the fishermen refused to offer the service for them to let this man on a boat over water so that Muhoozi would order how he'd get killed. Okay, so apparently the deal was that because he failed to do what he needed to do, Muhoozi had ordered his death by some sort of strangulation and being thrown in the deep waters of the lake. So that if he died, you know, if this man never showed up like he did, which was the opposite, they would say he resisted arrest and fell into the lake and died himself. So something like that. Just a different story than it happened. But unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which one it is for him, to accept a deal like this, you know, I don't know what he's going through, but these people are evil. They must have promised him something that would change his life, so he would commit to something like this. But the intention from the Muhoozis is the worst part. Okay? So anyways, the man did not go that route of the water because there was a lot of people on the street wanting to just deal with him, but they rescued him and they took him anyway. A picture was sent to Muhoozi. Immediately he posted it about catching this man and all that. You know, this is something that Museveni has done for many years. While people lived in camps in Acholi sub-region, while the Bateso were burned in trains, while the Baganda were killed in Luero, Museveni came in a border uniform at night, chopped people. In the morning, he came as a civilian, trying to mourn with them and look like a savior and acted as a guard. But truly, he was the one that caused all of these atrocities. You know, the LRA war was all Museveni. Luero killings was all Museveni. The Teso region, I mean, you can talk about, imagine Kasese. Remember the kingdom of Kasese? Same thing. Kichwamba, same thing. He does these things, and Muhoozi is trying to cause a situation where he comes in as a savior and shows people that he is the right man for the job as president. They're learning and acting on Museveni's script. But they know, I'm not going to say they don't know. They know that that people do not want them there, but they're forcing themselves on these people. So apparently the owner of that school is likely to lose his school Because with such an atrocity, you saw Muyingo come out and speak about it, they're now going to set certain stipulations against owning kindergarten schools or set up rules that will make it difficult for people like a genuine pastor like the owner of that school from operating. That's how they work. Okay? The plan of causing this much fear among people is going to continue. They're going to attempt to do more of this. In fact, Ugandans, brace for yourselves. If people don't rise up, these guys are not stopping. Like I said, they wanted 20 down, 20 killed. Some of them were already at Modern trying to execute it. The same thing is going to continue happening. In sacrifice for Museveni's witch doctors, and also to cause fear among people as they plan their coup d'etat. The act of the plan of the coup d'etat is still in motion. And to depopulate Uganda and Kampala areas, to cause intentional poverty among Ugandans so that they're easy to manage. You know, if history serves us right, people who are held in captivity are easier to manage than those who are free. And so they don't want Ugandans to be free to exist and choose and have the freedom to do whatever they want, to choose what they want, to live how they want. They want to control every bit of that. So they're going to depopulate by killing people, by hurting businesses, by asking a lot in taxes to people, by